We're
I am base.
we're in the second line of Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. We're talking about the Me'il HaEphod that was Kliot Techelis, the two six-fold strands, which is a total of 12 threads. So we derive from the parochis that just there, like there, it was always 6 threads. So it was 6 ply threads. So to over here, 6 ply threads. We have Xeva Shava Techelis Techelis. So he said, yeah, but the Shulayim, it also says Techelis. It says V'nelech Mishula B'Rimonav. It says Techelis with respect to the hem, the bottom of the garment that has the rimonim, that has the pomegranates on it. And there we said it's 8 ply threads because it was 3 materials that has to add up to 24 threads. So it was 8 each. So Malahalan Shmona Kan Shmona. So we say no, done in Kli Mikli and done in Kli Mitachshit Kli. We derive from the parochis, which is another utensil, so it's another full type of material. So we derive the material, the me'il, which is a full material, from the parochis, which is a full material. Being done in Kli Mitachshit Kli. We're not going to derive something that's a full, that's what the law should be with respect to the meal, which is a full material, from an ornament to its material. Namely, the pomegranates were just like ornaments on the bottom of the meal. So we say, no, I can give you an opposite svara. I'd rather done in gufo migufo. I should derive the meal from itself. The pomegranates were on the meal; they were on the robe on the bottom. Ain't done in gufo miyama. And we shouldn't derive from the parochis, which is totally separate and distinct from the meal. So I know the aminas, we say you're right. That would be a good kasha. That's why we have to explain that even though it doesn't say the word sheish with respect to the meal, the robe, it only says kalil techelis. Thank you very much. We had, I think, 5 appearances of the word sheish, and we said that one of them came to teach me chad l'shar begodim, that even if I have a beged where it doesn't say sheish, I just have material mentioned, it's supposed to be 6 ply. It's with the exception of the rimonim, where we say that we learn from Mashazar that it should be 8 ply. I know l'shar begodim shlo ne'emar ben sheish, so that this is the application. The meal doesn't say sheish, but it's still 6 ply threads. All right, and because it says kalil techelis, so kalil indicates that it's a gedil, that it's 2 strands, so therefore it's 2 6-fold strands. 2 6-fold strands equals 12. Parochis, we had said that the parochis itself, the curtain separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, is 24 threads. Esrim Rabba'a. Why is that? Because it says Techelis v'Argaman v'Solas Shani v'Sheish Mashizar. That's 4 materials: Techelis, Argaman, Solas Shani, and Sheish. So that's 4. Each one is 6 plies. That's 24. So parochis Esrim Rabba'a Dalad Shisa Shisa. I have 4 materials. Each one is 6 ply threads. So 6 times 4 equals 24. Lo dina v'lo daina. I don't need a din. I don't need a bezdin to determine this. This is obvious, not necessarily so obvious. Tosfos in the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amud Beis points out that you do have the word mashizar with respect to the parochis. I might have thought that the word mashizar should indicate 8, but because it says sheish mashizar, so you can't be both 6 or 8. So it means it's 6, and the mashizar is just there for the gzeira shabbat. Since it says mashizar with respect to the pa'amonim, and it says mashizar here, so that's how I know that the 3 materials there also have to add up to 24. So the mashizar there means that it's going to be a total of 8. I just noticed when I was going through the psukim that with respect to that gzeira shabbat, when the Torah describes the pa'amonim of the me'il, it doesn't say mashizar in Parshas Titzav. It only says in Parshas Pekudei. It's only, as you would know, only very slight differences in the psukim, right? In the psukim between the one and the other, they're only very slight. That's one of the differences in the descriptions. It only says Mashzah the second time around in Pekudei. You need it for the Gzeira Shabbat. Okay. Choshen ve'epod, and the Choshen, the epod is a total of 28 strands. Choshen ve'epod esrim u'shmona, and we know there's 28 strands. Minalan d'ksiv ve'asisa says you shall make a choshen mishpat maaseh choshev. You shall make it craftsman's work in maaseh efoda ta'asenu, and it's made out of what? Sahab, made out of gold. And then I have 4 materials after the mentioned afterwards. Techeles v'agaman v'slash shani v'sheish mashzar. The 4 materials are going to be 6 ply. That's 24. Abba the shisa esrim Abba, and the zav, the gold, is interwoven with each one of them. Abba, it's another 4. So therefore, that's 28. That's 28 altogether. So how do we know that the zahab is only interwoven with each of the other 4 materials? Maybe it gets its own 6 threads. No. Because it says Amakra, it says with respect to the gold threads that you take the gold and you divide it. But Kitse Pesilim, that you take the gold and you knock it to produce threads, and then you divide each of the two threads. Pesilim is two threads. The Kitses. Pesil, so Pesilim, that's two threads, and Mekitses, you divide each one of those two threads, so each one of the Pesilim, you divide, that's Mekitses, so that gives you a total of 4. Hare Kandal. Vashi Amar, well, Vashi says, well, I can derive it from the following. Amar Kra, it says that what do you do with these gold strands that you're going to make from the gold? Lassos, the whole purpose of them is to place them in the other materials. That's what it says in the Torah. Lassos, Besocha Techelis, Uvesocha Argaman. So how are you going to be lassos in the Techelis and in the Argaman? Hechinabit. So Nabid, Abba Trey. So if you're going to make, let's say, it says lassos always means you have to be consistent in terms of the way that it's put into the other material. So if I'm going to have 2 threads in each material, so then I'm not gonna have the same amount anyway. I'm not gonna have 6 anyway. I'm gonna have 8. Abba the tray, have a little tranya. If I'm going to make them differently, that with the 2 of the garments, I'm going to have 2-ply threads. The tray. So that's a total of 4. Tray the chad, and the other 2 garments, I'm going to have single threads. And that's going to add up to 6. So the pasuk said, "Be'asisa." It said that you have to. It actually said, right? It says, "Be'asisa ksiv shehu kol asios shavos." The pasuk says, "Be'asisa," that you have to make it these materials in such a way in which "Be'asisa choshem mishpat masei choshev," right? So hav techeles v'agmarim slashim v'sheish mashsar. Yasisa means that the way in which you make all of the different materials has to be exactly with the same amount of threads, and here it's going to be a different amount of threads in order to get to 6. So therefore, it makes sense that it should be only that it should be 4. Okay. So Amar Rechava, Amar Rabba Yehuda. Now, of course, Tosas asked the question. So it has to be the same. So make it 8, make it 12. So he says, yeah, but if you make it 8, then why not make it 12? Why not make it 100? Why not make it 1,000? So tafasta meruba lo tafasta. So therefore, you use the smallest amount. Amar Rechava, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Hamikareya big day kahuna loke. If you Rabbi Yehuda says that if you tear any of the big day kahuna, you get malchus. Shnei Amar, because it says with respect to the me'il, it says kepi sachra. Lo yikarea. You're not allowed to tear it. You make it like make an opening. You fashion an opening so it goes over the head. The robe goes over the head of the Kohen Gadol like a coat of mail. So it's not going to be sachra. So it's not going to rip. And somehow Rabbi Yehuda assumes that applies not only to the meal to it, but all of the other big day kahuna as well. So the question is, the Rambam says with respect to the meal, you can't rip it at all. With respect to the other big day kahuna, it says you can't rip it. So it sounds like the meal, you're not allowed to rip even if it's not derech hashchasa, even if it's for constructive purposes. So maskif love, Ravacha Bayakov asked, maybe what the Torah is telling you is Nabi le sabab, make an opening. Is to make a nice opening so that it won't rip, but not that there's an issur for ripping it. Means you should fashion it in such a way that it will be unlikely to rip. So the Gemara answers no, miksiv shelo yikareya. It doesn't say kifi sakwa shelo yikareya. Make an opening like a coat of mail so that it shall not rip. It says do not rip it. Rabbi Elazar, so Amar Rabbi Elazar Hamaziyah Koshin, along similar lines. When we're talking about the isurim that apply to the big day kahuna, Rabbi Elazar says if you move the choshen from the breastplate above from the apron, or you remove the staves that went into the rings on the side of the aron, loki, you get malchus. Shenemar lo yizach, because the pasuk says with respect to the choshen lo yizach choshen mi'ala epod, and it says with respect to the staves the tabos haron yuhabadim lo yasu mimenu lo yasu. So maskif Ravacha b'Yaakov has a similar takasha v'dimaki kama. Maybe the Torah is just saying that you should make it nice and tight, so it's not going to move. Chadkinu ve'avdinu, chadkinu ve'avdinu shapir, make it nice and tight. Kadesh lo yizach lo yasuru, so that the choshen won't move from the apod and the staves won't move from the rings down the next on the side of the aron. So miksiv shelo yizach v'shelo yasu. So you have a similar retort. It doesn't say do it this way so that it won't move, so that it won't be removed. It says don't do it. You're not allowed to do it. Okay, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Kedina, miksiv. Rabbi Yossi brought a kasha. It says in one pasuk, "V'tabos havon yu abadim lo yasu mimenu." In the rings next to the oven, you shall place the staves. You shall not remove the staves from the rings. But then it says you shall place the staves in the rings. Sounds like they get moved in and out. So it sounds like they do get moved around. The Bach has a different pasuk. The Bach says if you look in Rashi, Rashi has the pasuk behebesa es habadim batabos. So hakesa. So what does this mean? It means that you have a little bit of both. That the misparkin nishmatin, which means that the rods were they were the tops, the ends of the rods were thick, so that they had to be forced into the rings. But once they were in the rings, so then they moved freely around within the rings. But because they were very thick on the ends, they couldn't be brought outside of the area of the ring. So Tanya Namiyachi, the Brisa similarly says, that the staves have to go inside of the rings on the side of the oven. I might think that they don't move around at all. So we say that no, that they do get fashioned in there, and they can wiggle around between the rings. It's just that once it's just that getting it in is hard because the ends of the rods were very, very thick, and that's why you can't pull them out so easily. If I only had that pasuk, that it sounds like you can move them around, I might think that they go in and out easily. So they have to stay there permanently. So Hakate said, how does that work? That they slide in, but they can't be removed because they're thick on the ends. Tosfos has a whole big arichos here, which Tosfos suggests. If I wasn't afraid of my friends, then I would bash in the psukim in such a way that there were two sets of rods on the oven. There was one set that stayed there forever, and there was one set that came in and out. That when they would travel, they would move out that set of rods and carry, and the oven would be carried on it. So Tosfos says a whole arichos about that if you have the extra time and you want to take a look. Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina says, "My diksiv." What does it mean when it says with respect to the planks? It says you make the planks out of acacia wood. I'd say shitim omdim sheomdim derek day lost. What does it mean that they stand? This we learn for kol Torah kula, that whenever you do a mitzvah, it has to be derek day lost. So we hold the esrog the way that it grows, everything the way that it grows. So it should be that the way it grows, that it should be in that upright fashion. So davar acher. What else does omdim mean? Omdim shemamidin es sipuyan. That the gold plate was fastened on them, or Rashi says, or maybe that there was like some divine miracle that the gold plating on them never went bad. It never got rusty or ruined. Also, omdim means shalot Hashem atomar. That might think when the Beis Hamikdash, I might think that when the Mishkan was taken down and eventually the Beis Hamikdash was taken down, that the various pieces of them are not going to come back. Shematoma abad sivan vato sikuyan, that once they were stored away, we're never going to have them again. Tamalama omdim. It says no. It says omdim shomdim the olam. We're always going. We're always going to have it. It's going to come back. It's going to come. All the different pieces of our sanctuary are going to come back.
Did they? I don't remember. Did they Gones the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash after it was built? I don't think it says that.
I don't know. Rashi over here says Misha Nignazu. Sounds like he's assuming that they were stored away somewhere. That's what Rashi is assuming.
It was done before Shiloh, because by Shiloh they already had stone walls.
Right. So it sounds like that the
Mishkan that Moshe built was the only one that was never destroyed.
Right, that's true. So it was. So Rashi is alluding to some notion that because we didn't have Atzei Shitim in the Beis Hamikdash, it's saying that nonetheless the Atzei Shitim of the Mishkan itself will come back. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah. Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. So Amar Rabbi Kanan bar Chanina. What did he say? Be'amar. Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. My diksiv es bidei asrad l'shareis b'kodesh. You had the ministering garments that were meant to serve in the Kodesh, in the sanctuary. So Sarad, says Rashi, is a lashon sarid. It's a remnant. It remains over. So we'll turn the page. I am based on face. Amali big dekuna. So this is to teach you that if not for the big day kuna, there would have been no remainder to the Jewish people. Misonan Sheisah is a euphemism that we needed the big day kuna, the service that was performed by the big day kuna and the kabbanos that were performed while wearing the big day kuna, so it kept us going. Rabbi Shmuel Banachmeni Amar today, nowadays presumably it's tefillos that we say that it's neshama from svasin. Rabbi Shmuel Banachmeni Amar debei Rabbi Shimon Tana Begadim Shigordin Osan Kipiyasan Mikalehen. That misardin mehem kulum. The lashon of sub big day hasrad means that the way that the big day kuna were fashioned was that they had a circular loom, and that the garments would be completely prepared on the loom to the size of the coin, and only a small amount was left over that afterwards was woven into the main garment. So that was the sarid, the misardin was left over and woven in afterwards. So mahi. What is that? That was that the little piece that was left over. So Reish Lakish says Elu Maseh Machat, that it was sewn with a needle. It was sewn with a needle, and it was woven by itself, and then sewn with a needle back into the main garment. So Meisvei, we have a kasha big day kuna enos inosan Maseh Machat, but we have a brisa that says explicitly that you're not allowed to sew the big day kahuna with needlepoint. Ela Maseh Oreg, it has to be woven. Shenemar Maseh Oreg, it says Maseh Oreg. So that seems to be like with respect to the meal. It says Vayak Pip or Roshobu Soho Safa Yel Sabif Maseh Oreg. So Amar Abaye, no, the part that was made by needlepoint Lonitzocha Ela the base yad shelahem. That was just it was the sleeves. The sleeves that were made separately, and then they were sewn together through with needlepoint. The Tanya base yad shel big day kahuna nereges b'fnei asma. It says in the brisa that the sleeves of the big day kahuna were woven by themselves, and then afterwards they were sewn by a needle into the rest of the beg. And the Rebecca sima beg, magas at pisa sayad, and then they would go up until the hand, the wrist of the coin. So Amar Rechava, Amar Rav Yehuda Shlosh Aronos Asa B'Tzal. Chava said we're talking about Yoni Beis Hamikdash. We have to finish up before we get to the last parak that deals with laws of Yom Kippur. So we got to get everything in. So Chava said the name of Rabbi Yehuda Shalosh Aronos Asa B'Tzal. There were 3 aronos that B'Tzalo made. There was an inner one that was made out of wood. Emsai Shel Eitz and Tisha. That was 9 tvachim. Panimi Shel Zav Shimona. Then there was another one that was placed inside that one. That was only 8 tvachim. And Chitzon Asara Umashu. And then the outer aron, that needed to be a little bit thicker. That needed to be a little bit thicker. So it was Asara Umashu. So it was 10 tvachim and a little bit. That it was made a little bit thicker on the bottom. And then there was, that's a mashu. Then there was another tefach that covered up the kaporis, covered up the lid on top of the oven on the top. The hatanya chadasaru mashu. There's another brisa that says that it was not the asaru mashu, it was a chadasaru mashu. So lo kasha hakamandam yesh bavio tefach. Not a kasha. The one who says achadasaru mashu held that the thickness on the bottom was the tefach, and then there was another mashu. So I needed one tefach on the bottom. Then I needed another tefach to cover the kaparis, and then I needed a little bit more. So therefore, it had to be 2 and a little bit more than the 9. So it had to be at 11 and a little bit. The one who says it's only 10 a little bit, so I knew I needed only a little bit of thickness on the bottom. Then I needed a tefach to cover up the kaparis. So according to the first opinion, I don't have a little bit that goes above the kaparis. According to the second opinion, I do have a little bit that goes above the kaparis. That's what Rashi says. So according to that second opinion, that I had a little bit that went above the kaparis, what's that extra mashu? The first opinion, I understand. The mashu is the thickness on the bottom. What's the mashu according to the second opinion? My mashu is a zir. That was like the little crown that went around the top of the oven. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, shlosha zirim heim. So Rabbi Yochanan says that there were 3 different crowns, shel mizbeach, shel oven, and shel shulchan. There was a zer zahav saviv for the mizbeach haketoris, the mizbeach hazav, and for the aron, and for the shulchan. Shel mizbeach zocha aron minatlo. The one for the mizbeach was for Aaron. That represented the Keser Kahuna. Shel shulchan zocha David minatlo. One of the shulchan represented the Keser Malchus, so that was taken by David. Shel Aaron represented the Keser Torah. Adai Munach, so that wasn't given to anyone in particular. It was given to all of Klal Yisrael. Munachu, Say any member of Klal Yisrael that wants to take it, it's there for the taking. The Torah is there for the taking. Shema Toma Pachosu. So you might think so. It's there for anybody to take. So therefore, it's not so valuable. So Tamalomar, no. Bimalachim Yimlochu. That it's through the Talmidei Chachamim. It's through the Torah. That's called Man Malchi Rabbanan, right? They're the ones who cause everybody else, even the Malachim, to be able to reign and get their Malchus. It all comes from the. It all comes from the Torah. It all comes from the Talmidei Chachamim. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan asked the kasha. It says Zer, Karin, and Zir. It says Zer, we read it Zir, like there's an extra yud. So Zacha Nase Salo Zer, Zir. If you're Zoche, so then it becomes like an adornment. That's a Zir. Lo Zacha Zara. So then it becomes like a Zion Resh. Zara, we don't read it Zara, we read it Zer, right? So that's why we have the extra yud. The extra yud shows you like it's Zer. Otherwise, you would think it would be Zar. So lo zacha Zara himenu. It's going to be a stranger to you if you're not zoche, if you don't learn Torah lishma, as Rashi says l'kaima, and you don't keep it, but you don't keep the words of the Torah, so that becomes a stranger. Rabbi Yochanan asked the kasha. It says with respect to the Aron, that it said in the singular that the single person should make the Aron. That Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to make the Aron. But then afterwards it says that everybody makes the Aron. So we see from here that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Talmid Chacham. He was the Rav here. He was the Rav of everybody. So he had the responsibility to teach the Torah and so forth, to build the Aron, but everybody else had the responsibility to take care of him. Everybody else had to do his malacha. That's the idea. We have a Talmid Chacham, so people should take care of him to do his malacha. The Aron was gilded both on the inside and the outside with gold. We said that B'Tzalel made an Aron of wood in the inside, and then there was a golden Aron inside of that, and then there was a golden Aron outside of that. So I'm a rabbi, that's to teach me that called Talmid Chacham, Shein Tocho Kibaro Eno Talmid Chacham. The Aron represents the Torah, teaches me that a Talmid Chacham has to be golden both on the outside and has to be golden on the inside. It can't be that only on the outside he presents himself as very pious. He has to genuinely be pious on the inside. So Abaye, what did Abaye say? Abaye, V'itema Rabba Baba Ula Amar. The Amar gets moved according to the Masorah Shas. So they said what? One of them said, Nikra Nisab. He's considered to be an abomination if he's not genuinely pious on the inside. Shenema Afki Nisab in that you're going to be abominable and you're going to be filthy to me. Ishosa Kamayim, a person who drinks like water the Torah, but he does ablas. He doesn't keep the mitzvahs himself. Everything he does things that are a travesty of against the Torah. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonis, and Ma'id Ksiv Allah Mazeh. Why does a Kasil, a foolish person, have money to buy chacham and he has no heart? What's that referring to? Woe to those people who are, outwardly Talmidei Chachamim, that they learn Torah, but they don't have the fear of God to practice what they're learning. Practice what they preach. Rabbi Yanai said along similar lines, Chabal de Leis Darta, a person doesn't have a courtyard, he doesn't have like the main property, which is the Yiras Shemaim. Yiras Hashem Hiyot Sarot. The main thing that you're supposed to have is the fear of God. He builds the gate. The gateway is the learning of Torah, but the learning is, why build the gate if you don't have the courtyard? The whole purpose is to get to Yiras Shemaim. Amalu Rabba Rabbanan. So Rabba said to the Chachamim, I make a request of you. Don't earn a double Gehinnom. You're going to learn Torah and you have to afflict yourself to learn Torah, but you're not going to keep the Torah properly. It'll be a proper paradigm with the Torah. You're not going to get any reward in the world to come. So you're going to drive yourself crazy learning Torah, and it's going to be hard work in this world. You're not going to get any reward in the next world unless you have proper Yiras Shamayim. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, what does it mean when it says V'zos haTorah Asher Sam Moshe? We say that all the time. We say, this is the Torah that Moshe placed. So Zacha, what's Sam? So Sam means it's like a tonic. Zacha nasis lo Sam Chayim. If a person is Zoiche and they learn Torah properly, the Shema, so then it becomes a tonic of life. Lo Zacha nasis lo Sam Misa, but otherwise it becomes toxic. The Hainu de Amar Rava, that's what Rava said. The Uman la Sama Dechiyah. if a person works hard at Torah to be consistent in his learning of Torah diligently, so then it becomes the tonic of life. The lo uman, the person doesn't learn it with his strength and with sincerity. Some in the moisa, so then it becomes toxic. It becomes a source of death. So I'm Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmeni, Rabbi Yonasan Rami Ksiv. So Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmeni quoted that Rabbi Yonasan brought a kasha. It says in one place, Pikudei Hashem Yishar Misam Chelek, that the words, the ordinances of Hashem are straight and they gladden the heart. They bring simcha, right? And simcha l'Torah is this is the proof text for that principle. Uksiv imas Hashem tzarufa. But then it says that the words of Hashem, like are well, sufa literally means flawless in the context of the pasuk, but could also be understood that it's going to be purging you. It's going to purge somebody. It could, be a source of distress. So zocha misamchaso. If a person's zoicha and they learn Torah properly, so then it's going to cause them happiness. Lo zocha, a person doesn't learn Torah lishma, for sincere purposes, it's sarafto, then it's going to purge him. It's going to be a source of distress. Reish Lakish says, I could just look at that one pasuk, Imas Hashem Sarufa, and darshan it in both ways. Zacha sarafto, that if a person is zaycha, they learn Torah properly, so it purifies him. That's sarafto, the chayim, purifies him for life. Lo zacha sarafto the misa, but otherwise it's going to purge him to death. Yiras Hashem tahira omedes la'ad, that the fear of God is tahira, it's pure and it stands forever. Samar Chanina, what is that referring to? That's a pasuk in Tehillim. That's somebody who learns Torah with purity. What does it mean to learn Torah in purity? A person who's not going to have all kinds of hirhuim, because he'll make sure that when he reaches the age that he really has a desire to be with a woman, so he'll get married first, and then he'll be able to live with his wife Bitara, and he won't have hirhuim that are going to cause him, bad things. And he'll be able to learn Torah B'Tara. I think the Stipler Gaon was quoted as saying that a person only begins to learn Torah properly after they get married. Eidus Hashem Ne'emana. It says that the Eidus Hashem is faithful. So Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Ne'emana he the hide belong there, that it is faithful, that it's going to testify in the world to come on behalf of those who learned it, that the Torah is going to testify who learned it properly, who didn't learn it properly. Let's get back to the Big Day Kahuna. We're having so much fun with all of this. Okay, Maaseh Rokeim, Maaseh Choshev. So it says that it was a Maaseh Rokeim. It was the work of embroidery. It says that with respect to the Masach, the Pesach HaOel, the covering that went into the Kodesh, that went from the Chatzir into the area of the Kodesh, that you make a Masach, the Pesach HaOel. And then there's a pasuk that says Maaseh Choshev, that when you make the Mishkan, the Urios on top of the Mishkan, so it's referred to as a Maaseh Choshev, that it's like craftsman's work. So which is it? So Amar Rabbi Elazar, that means Sherokmin B'Makom Shechoshbin, that they would embroider. It's all one thing. First, they would draw the pattern, and then they would embroider over that pattern in order to make sure that it have the right design. So Tana Mishmei Rabbi Nechemia, that there were different types of materials. You find this in Rashi, Alakomishi talks about this. There were different types of materials. They were made in different ways. Sometimes you had a curtain that was Maaseh Choshev, and sometimes it was Maaseh Rokeim. If it was Rokeim, it was a Maaseh Machat. It was made with a needlepoint. The Pikach Partsuf Echad, therefore it would have the image, the same image, whether it be a lion or an eagle, whatever it would be the same image on both sides. Choshev, it was a Maaseh Choshev, it would be woven. Maaseh Oreg, the Pikach Shnei Partsufo, so you can have two different images woven on the two different sides. On one side could be woven an image of an eagle, on the other side an image of a lion, for example. Okay. So we said that when the Kohen Gadol wears the 8 garments, so that's when the somebody who is of appropriate stature can make a request of the Urim B'Tumim when the Kohen Gadol is wearing his 8 garments. So Kiyasa Rav Dimi Amar, Rav Dimi said that the Begadim Kohen Gadol Mishamish Ben, the 8 garments that a Kohen Gadol would wear, a Mashuach Mechama, the Kohen who would go out to the war, and he would say, "V'nigash HaKohen v'diber ala'am," and he would tell people words of Musa before they went out into battle. So he would also wear the 8 garments. Begadim Kohen Gadol Mishamish Ben, Mashuach Mechama Mishamish Ben. Presumably means that if he would be in the Beis Hamikdash, then you're not supposed to wear the 8 garments outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Presumably it doesn't mean when he's standing in the battlefield. when he would go into the Beis Hamikdash. That's what Rashi says. In Baal Labad with Beis Hamikdash, he would do a vote in the Beis Hamikdash. Lovesh Ches begodim. He would also begodim. He would also wear the 8 garments. Shnema big day Hakodesh Shili Aaron says this big day Kodesh that Aaron the Kohen Gadol would wear. You the bun of Acharav. They would go to the children who would be like him on a similar level of kedusha. Lemishabava gedula Acharav. Anybody who would come after him in a state of gedula. Like a Mashiach Muhammad, doesn't have to be his son. Would wear the 8 garments. Okay. Must be Rabbi Barabba. So Rabbi Barabba asked the kasha. It sounds elsewhere like the Mashiach Muhammad didn't have 8 garments. Some say this just without a person's name attached to it. I might think that the son of a Mashiach Muhammad, a Kohen is the Mashiach Muhammad, was decided to stand in the battlefield, that his son would take over his position after him. The same way that the Torah tells us that the son of the Kohen Gadol follows in his footsteps and gets his position afterwards. Talmud Lomar. So that's why the pasuk says no. This only applies to the Kohen Gadol, because it says with respect to the Kohen Gadol, Shivas Yamim Yilbasham HaKohen. For 7 days, he wears the 8 garments to get himself ready to serve at Takta Mibanab. And this is also followed in his footsteps. So after him, his sons are going to do the same thing. Ashir Yabo Elo Moed. And who gets to take over for the Kohen? The type of Kohen who goes into the Ol Moed is going to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Misharoi Labo Ol Moed. Misa Maxi Chazi. But the truth is, if we say that the Mashiach Muhammad also gets to wear 8 garments, so he can also go into the Yom Moed. So why say that his son should be excluded from taking over after him? They're also Yilbasham HaKohen. So that's also a case where the father gets to wear the 8 garments. So Amar Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Nachman Yitzchak says, no, it doesn't mean that if you wear the 8 garments, then the person's child takes over after him automatically. Hakikama. Koshi Ika Mashiach the Yom Moed. If the main purpose, the main service of the Kohen is that he goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that's namely the Kohen Gadol, as opposed to the Mashiach Milchama. His main service is to stand on the battlefield, even though it's true he does wear the 8 garments, but because his main service is not going to the Yom Moed, that's why his children do not take over after him. Okay. Okay, have a great day.
Where they're going out into the marketplace outside of the